All right, so I'm going to call the Community Center Exploration Committee meeting to order for Tuesday, September 19th. It is 5:17 p.m. and we do have a quorum present. I know Jen, unfortunately, is not going to be able to join us tonight, but I do expect Janet to join us momentarily here, so I'll keep an eye out in case she pops up in the attendees. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes from May 18th of 2023. A big thank you to Janet, I think drafted those. They were circulated a long time ago. I recirculated them to bring them to the top of everyone's inbox. I don't know if anyone had any comments or questions on those. All right, then I'll move that we accept the minutes as drafted. Is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All right, roll call vote. Bill,
Yes.
Susan,
Yes.
Tim,
Yes.
Nikki,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. So that carries unanimously. Very quick chair member update. Since we last met, obviously it was a while ago, the Neary Building Committee has hired an owner's project manager that will be with us for the project. That firm is Skanska. They went through a very competitive RFQ process. The MSBA this morning accepted the request for services for a design firm. So it's basically the procurement document that will now go out to the street for firms to officially come in and go through a whole rigorous process to be eventually voted on in conjunction with the MSBA. That won't conclude though until December. The magic date is December 5th of when that firm will be selected, and that's basically aligns with a MSBA board meeting. Unlike the OPM process where the town's boards and subcommittees actually had all the votes, the MSBA actually has votes and actually has the majority of the votes. So while we do have some representatives from that committee that will be present and have a vote in it, they will also be joined by others. So thinking ahead, the preliminary timeline is any project that is going to be presented to town meeting would be presented sometime in early 2025. So just right, not 24, 25. And that's a pretty quick timeline from what we understand. That's actually not a slow timeline. So it's, once that designer's on board, they're going to have to get rolling pretty quickly. But that's where a ton of communication and liaising with this committee, I think, is going to be really important because that's really where stuff starts to kind of come together. And obviously, depending on where that project's headed, could directionally impact where this project is headed. So in discussions with the superintendent, he is very appreciative of the collaboration to date of everyone, and definitely agrees that our communication strategies have to be in sync if there's going to be some common goals that we try to achieve. Otherwise, we'll have different groups trying to move forward on different things at different periods of time that may not fit the overall town financial picture. So that's where that project stands. Are there any questions on that?
No,
Okay.
Jason, do you need me to take minutes or is somebody doing that already?
I got it.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And the good news is this is being recorded, so you'll come back to it too. So with that being said, I'm going to start to move over our friends from DRA, but just wanted to thank everyone for the flexibility on the timing of this meeting. Chaired a bunch of committees. This was quite honestly the most difficult meeting to schedule based on schedules, and I realize it's just an incredibly difficult time of the year for everyone. So before I turn the floor over to DRA once they're in the room, just want to really acknowledge we're going to kind of let them bring us up to speed on what they've done, what they're thinking. We can certainly provide questions or initial reactions. I will likely cut off the discussion in and around 6:30. but we are not, just in fairness to the voting members that are here tonight, we're not going to vote in, nor should we vote on, there's going to be a lot of substance, I think we're going to hear. We'll come back and have a future meeting to discuss that in great detail. So I expect this to be a listening session to start, and then we'll obviously ask questions. But I think what I'd hope we could do is not deliberate on which path or paths we want to take at this point, unless there's just some clear marching orders, because I think there's obviously a lot of things that go into this. So, is everyone good with that sort of premise of how we'll kind of move forward, at least for this evening? Then we can talk about next steps after that. Okay. Hi, Jim, Courtney, and move Justine over too, but she hasn't moved yet.
I always love being invited and promoted into the panelist position.
Jim or Courtney, I don't know which one of you is going to kick off, but just obviously, I don't think you've had the opportunity to meet all the faces on the screen. So just if you could give some background of yourselves, your firm, and then obviously we're here to listen to what you've been up to, and then we'll react obviously on the back end.
That mute button is always hard to find. I can just quickly kick off in terms of thanking you for having us here this evening. We do have some good content to share with you and to begin to get your thoughts, as Jason indicated. My name Jim Barrett. I serve as the principal for this effort. And along with me this evening on camera, Courtney Southwick as our project manager. And Justine will check on her, as I know she's just down the hall from me, but trying to get in, I'm sure. Courtney, do you want to take it away?
Sure, let me attempt sharing my screen real quick. It says it's disabled right now.
One other team member, Justine DeChamps, coming in as our other team member here with us.
Jason, just to let you know, Janet joined us as well, in case you didn't see that.
I moved her over, so she's good. And Courtney, you should be good on access to present. And hi, Janet, how are you?
Hi, good. Sorry for being late.
No worries.
All right, I think I shared the correct screen here. You should see a full screen title image slide.
You're good.
All right. So just to get us started with this, like Jim said, we're happy to be here and learn a little bit more about Southborough. We were involved in the last study, as some of you were involved in, where we looked at all the town buildings and assessed the spaces for all the departments in the various buildings, including NERI as well, looking at the superintendent's office there. The South Union building, DPW, and the library, and the senior center, as well as townhouse and town hall. So we were in every single building, and Woodward is one of the ones that we looked at as well. This one, we are looking at Mary Finn Elementary School as adaptive reuse, but we're also looking at other options that we'll highlight. But as Jason said, right now, this is kind of a progress update to get some feedback from you. This is just we did a first blush and spoke with each department individually, but I like hearing collective feedback. I think everybody looking at the same thing at the same time is going to be really helpful for us to give, to make this a successful study. So you may see things tonight that you really love, and you may see things that are like, yeah, let's think about that. So we can look at each one of these options and refine them after we present them tonight and get your feedback. So as I mentioned, we're looking at adaptive reuse of Mary Finn Elementary School, test fits. What we did here is we're going to show you 3 different options, and what we call these are different intensity options. And those different intensity options are different levels of renovation. A low intensity is looking at finishes, new floors, little paint on the walls, potentially swapping out light fixtures and new ceilings. Medium intensity gets a little bit higher. You're looking at, taking down, putting in new doors and locations and opening up walls, but not really structural improvements. And high intensity is structural improvements. It's opening up spaces. It's making it more open concept versus just classroom spaces. You're actually we actually do high intensity in like the plumbing, for the plumbing spaces. Obviously all the toilets and everything that's in an elementary school aren't necessarily appropriate for all the rest of the departments that we're looking at for today. So those are our 3 renovation options that we'll be looking at. And the rest of these options, we're not doing plans for those necessarily, but what we are going to do is we're going to look at construction costs, cost per square foot, and apply those to the appropriate programs. And the square footage numbers that we have for those programs are based on our previous studies. So that was very helpful as we move forward in the exercise. Existing conditions. So Justine and myself, we met with Brian and Keith and walked through the Mary Finn Elementary School. So we got all the backstory. Brian, the head custodian there, he was wonderful. He's been there for a while, quite a while actually. And so he knows a lot about the building, was able to fill us in on all the, the history of the different spaces, the addition, what's new, what's not new. So we were able to gather some information from that walkthrough as well as some plans. And then we looked at an AHERA report that was provided by the school district, which identifies, for those of you that don't know what AHERA reports are, they identify all the asbestos in a building. And we know that this is, I have 1950s here, but it's a 1964 main building. So we know that there is some asbestos. So that AHERA report is going to be very helpful as part of this exercise. And then looking at the existing value of the building and site. And the reason why we want to know the existing value of both the building and site combined is because the value of the renovation and the intensity of the renovation can potentially trigger code upgrades. And that's something we want to just highlight tonight. With your low intensity renovation, you're probably not going to trigger code upgrades. With your medium and your high, you're probably going to start triggering upgrades that affect the insulation around your building. The requirements actually changed this past July, and they're much higher than they used to be. So that's one example. Seismic and structural assessments are another one. So the whole building would have to be assessed structurally and potentially reinforced for seismic upgrades. Septic system is original. We haven't looked into this. We haven't studied. This is basically just from conversation. Structural assessment. We have not reviewed or assessed existing structural drawings as part of this study. And then again, through our walkthrough, it was noted that no issues were reported with water infiltration in the building. So these are just some key elements. Oh, I skipped over the emergency generator. That's kind of a bonus of looking at this building too, is that it has emergency backup power. So what we did is we took all the drawings that we received, because we had the original drawings, we had some with the additions, but there was no one set of drawings that combined the whole building so that we could look at this holistically. So Justine in our office actually built a 3D model of the school. And we were able to send plans back over to Keith so he can use those, and the school district can use those for other purposes too. But what we know is that the building is in fair condition, and many of you have been there already and are very familiar with the building. Upon first glance, we loved seeing some of these spaces. They were, like I said, in fair condition, and we don't anticipate renovation, in any of these larger community spaces for the most part. The gym is in excellent condition. We don't anticipate any renovation needed there. The envelope of the building, you know, if no code upgrades are triggered, the brick is in great condition. We didn't see any structural issues walking around the outside of the building or water issues. And in the space, like in the library, that's quite a nice space, you know, that wouldn't need a whole, you know, intense renovation for certain portions of that space. And then we did mention to Jason that we would like to look at the acoustics in this cafeteria / multi-purpose room or cafetorium, because it is a nice space, but it could benefit from looking at some acoustic treatment in there for different types of, you know, whether you're having a yoga class or a performance in there. I'm sure I actually haven't been there for a performance, but just walking in, it was a very live space, very bouncy.
Courtney, what do you mean by fair, like a fair building or fair? When you use the word fair, what do you mean by that?
Which contact, which
You described.
when in fair condition.
Yeah.
So fair condition means it's what you would expect for that age of the building. It's not needing repair at this time. We don't anticipate something needing repair in the near future for whatever that component may be. So if the masonry is in fair condition, it's a 1964 building. It's looking great considering, you know, the age of the building. And we don't anticipate a lot of repointing needed, no mortar repair, things like that. No, lot of brick repair. We wouldn't see that necessarily needed for this building in the near future.
Okay.
That I responded to that word too. I would have thought you'd say it was good condition. Is this an architecture thing?
It might be.
Okay.
And actually the newer portion it is really good condition.
Okay.
We didn't see a lot of efflorescence or anything, any evidence of like water damage or anything like that. So we think it's in pretty good condition. There was a little, you know, there may be a little bit of work, but not a lot. You can see it's mostly cleaning, I think, that's needed for the exterior of the building, you know, a little pressure washing here and there of the masonry, but the masonry itself and the mortar itself is in decent condition.
This is a little, oh, I have a question. This is a little more of a curiosity, is what is underneath the cafetorium floor? It's like a hollow space. Is there some sort of hollow space under there?
There is a hollow space, and Brian was telling us that he dare not go under that space. It's a type of crawl space. It is accessible. It's not, you know, there's no daylight under there. It's really just a crawl space. That's not even a full basement. It does have ventilation under there. But again, we don't have structural drawings that show the full extent of that. So we weren't able to kind of, you know, we don't know the depth of it or anything at this time. It's not usable space for sure. But I think that does help contribute to the acoustics issue that I mentioned before, when you have an elevated deck versus a slab on grade as well.
Just wanted to check that there really isn't a pool under there that we could use. And I didn't think.
Is that a rumor in Southborough that there's a pool?
Oh, you've watched too many old movies, you know.
Well, that would be a next level study that you could figure out and solve that problem pretty quickly, I'm sure. So I noted a couple of challenges here with existing building reuse, but and when I say challenges, they're not really roadblocks. It's more, you know, just design challenges, or sometimes it's, you know, monetary challenges in terms of the more that you want to do to make this more flexible, the more expensive it can get. But, you know, some of the existing building classrooms may be larger than program spaces. So in our low intensity options, you'll see that we're just using classrooms as is. And even though program spaces may not need to be that big, for example, the senior center, you may only require 13,000 square feet, but it might be what the numbers you see are a little bit higher because you're using larger space without demolishing walls and things like that, just as a example. The desire to maximize library space and improve sightlines and flow. Again, this is looking at something where, because you have a lot of classrooms, you would have to take down walls for that, and we'll look at those plans as well. Spatial flow connection of interiors for the senior center program. Pam, I know you expressed a concern. We don't want to just go into classrooms, you know, and plug space, you know, plug different programs into classrooms as is. We'll show you the different levels of intensity, and some previous projects that we've done that actually show you examples of, you know, here's changing finishes, and here's something where you're looking at just a total renovation. And then something that I think is really important with this project is ensuring that no program feels like it's a back of house. You want to make sure that whoever's coming to this building, there's good wayfinding. You visibly know where the entrance is to the program, whether it's rec or senior center or library or any other program that we're showing tonight. So this is the existing plan. As I mentioned, there's a lot of benefits of these multiple entries into the building, but making sure that it doesn't feel like back of house is going to be key with any of the solutions. The original building is the main bold portions here with the different classrooms. The addition is kind of highlighted with this gradient. These are the addition portions of the building. So just something for you to be thinking about as we're looking at these options. And I've mentioned the different intensities. I think it's important to keep in mind just the scale of magnitude of cost per square foot for these different types of work. We've given the descriptions of the type of work to our estimator. He's provided some current numbers for us that we are using as part of this study. You know, if you're doing a low intensity renovation for this type of project, you're looking at $150 per square foot. And again, that's finishes, this changing out, you know, floor finishes, looking at wall finishes, potentially ceiling finishes, and lighting. Medium intensity renovation is stepping it up, you know, looking at new toilet room fixtures in addition to, you know, potentially adding in doors, things like that. And then 400 per square foot is stepping it to the next level, where you're looking at reframing, redoing structural, opening up spaces, that type of thing. And then as you see the new building cost per square foot is over here on the side. What I want to note also is that site work is not included in these numbers. And that's something that we thought was very important to highlight, because when we're comparing apples to apples for an interior renovation, we want to make sure we're looking at the same thing in terms of square footage and types of space. Site work would be separate from this.
Can you define site work? What do you mean by that?
Any parking or any drainage work, any field work, you know, if you were doing a new rec center and you were building new fields, that would not be in that cost. It's really just building cost, construction costs that are in those numbers.
I am honored that the library is the most expensive per square foot. With that, for the record.
I'm going to hand this over to Jim to share some of our precedent work that we think is helpful for this portion of the study.
Yep, thanks, Courtney. We just wanted to take about 5 minutes here to share with you some other examples. We, as a firm, have had opportunity to work throughout New England with communities like Southborough in assessing their town-wide needs. So as we did with your community a few years back, as Courtney touched on, the town-wide study, often from those studies, then moving in more narrowly to either a building-focused or a use-focused study, much like what we're doing now with the Finn study. And then from there, often opportunity to carry that forward. And these are a few communities where we've engaged the community both at a town-wide level, then at a subset study level, like this study. And in these cases, these have moved forward. So if we could go to the next slide. This starts with the Windsor Senior Center. And Courtney touched on the 3 levels of intensity: low level, medium intensity, and high level in terms of renovation scopes. In the efforts here, this is a former middle school. It's located in Windsor, Connecticut. Within this building, there are probably upwards of 15 to 20 different town agencies and other community uses of the building. One of them happens to be the senior center. And the work within the senior center probably could be characterized as low intensity, so the lower end of the spectrum. We did do some exterior skin work. You can see in the indication to the right, we reworked some larger panes of glass that afforded a better use on the inside of the building. We also addressed ADA compliance issues and accessibility issues for the senior center. Next slide will give you a sense of some of the interior fit and finish. So to the left, it had been used as senior center space for a number of years. One of the goals was to make it feel warmer, have it have an update in terms of fit and finish. This gives you some of a sense of moving in that direction. But as Courtney said, at a low intensity level, not really addressing issues that would be questions of, well, that brick wall at the back, we'd like to take that out and open it up. Structural modification not made part of this type of repurposing and refreshing of space. Next slide. This one jumps ahead. So this would be kind of at the other end of the spectrum. This would be high intensity. This is in the town of Duxbury, taking a former and really valued component in their community, a former school, and converting it to library use. Now, to achieve this, some of the issues and concerns included structural modifications such that it didn't necessarily feel exactly like it did as a former kind of double-loaded corridor expression. So we did have structural renovation and augmenting the existing wood frame renovation with steel that was inserted into the building to help us open up and achieve some of these issues. We also addressed issues like parking and access, and that's some of what Courtney was touching on as we kind of view the Finn site, some of the opportunity that's available there. Next slide, please. So this gives you a sense of the configuration of the parking and that addressing the lower portion of this where it has drop-off area. That was the traditional front face of the building. This also opens onto a common area within the community. It has a small museum within it, a school, and other facilities that are Duxbury facilities. But by using the upper portion of this slide and really creating the front door at the top portion of this, we expanded parking, we created a new sense of entry, and really took advantage of these multiple kind of ways in which you can get to this building, address it, and enter it. The images to the right give a sense of some of the types of spaces that were developed. So the large open reading rooms are actually kind of the combination of several of the classroom spaces along the double-loaded corridor where Courtney has the cursor running. Down below, this is an image of a public community meeting space that's made available in a way where it can be open to the public after hours, even after the library is closed, and not expose the library to security issues in terms of people venturing too far into the building. So with an element like that, things like toilet core, access, security are all key concerns. This gives you a sense of that idea of having to thread new structure into the building. So the red dashed area kind of represents the former corridor space and a double loaded corridor. But you can see the configuration and layout of the library space that's layered in underneath that. And down that center spine, we kind of utilized it to help kind of shape some of the reading spaces or some of the breakout spaces that are made part of that overall planning for this library. And again, given the structural components of this that were necessary to facilitate these changes, we'd see this at the higher intensity level as an example. Next slide, Courtney. So one that might fall in between, this is the Tolland Library. It was a former 1960s vintage elementary school. It is connected to an existing older elementary school complex. Some of the challenges that we had within it, many of the spaces that we were inheriting as part of the library or the proposed library spaces actually had very little connection to the out of doors. And that was something that was very important to the library staff and the community. So even in areas where we didn't have a large connection of space outside, we have these little pocket areas where we could develop enough green space so that you had the natural light and availability of connection to understanding if it's raining or snowing outside or what kind of conditions do we have. We also worked in this to improve the flow of the library. Yet in this case, we kind of did not do it at the intensity level that we did in Duxbury. If we can go to the next slide. This gives you a sense of the overall floor plan of the space. So main entry point found over to the left at the midpoint of that rectilinear area. And you can see just as you come into the vestibule, the idea of being able to have immediately to the right of it, that community space. So this was another example of making community space available such that it did not necessarily create a security issue for the rest of the library should it be used before or after normal use hours, of hours. The space to the right is actually double-story mezzanine space, and that has been inserted over a former gymnasium area. So this did have a certain amount of structural component to it, but again, not at the intensity level that we had experienced with the Duxbury. This is an overall site plan that gives you a sense of the overall complex. So at the upper portion of the site, the small squared rectangle, that is very much the town administrative kind of component of their town function. So everything from town manager to various engineering departments, etc., work their way all the way back into the building. The library in the two areas of the green, the light and darker green, are the areas that we focused on. But this is an example of studying at the townwide level where we studied this building in its entirety, and then on the specific use study level, focused on the two areas shaded in green. And again, this would probably fall into that mid renovation category. And this gives you a sense of the space before, the existing gym space, the type of windows that were found within it. And then this next image coming will give you a sense of kind of the after, if you will. Same space, reconfigured, reimagined as additional library space, helping to augment the existing library in a way where it provided spaces that could provide conference space, small reading space, areas for children, mezzanine space for folks who are looking for a quieter place to study within it. And next slide, please. This is that multi-use community room space, and it gets a workout in many ways. You know, in terms of late night meetings that might happen there, daytime meetings that might augment the library meeting opportunities, and then a wide range of flat floor community use spaces like the kids' yoga that is being shown in the image to the right. And next slide, and another example of trying to open to the exterior, create spaces that have a sense of openness and a sense of distance in terms of vista. So really trying to create those opportunities within the space. And the last case study that I'll share with you, and excuse us, our case study numbers are jumping all over the place.
That's
but
on me.
no, not at all. That was me scrambling these around probably at the last minute. Scranton Memorial Library, certainly at the upper level in terms of intensity, but this is an example of having an historic facility that's coupled together with a 1970s edition, and yet we added onto it once again just about a year ago, opening doors there. But trying to get a blend of space such that no matter where you are in this library, you have the sense that you're in the same space. And this is an example of the knitting together. The left wall there represents the outer shell of the existing historic Carnegie era library. The stair kind of cascades down along it, and to the right, the addition to that facility. If you could hit the next slide, Courtney. This gives you a sense of the floor plan, really a spine of space that moves vertically through in circulation, and then off of it, the various collection areas, inclusive in the lower left-hand corner of the plan, the historic Carnegie era library, which is knitted together through these, you know, playful staircases that allow access to it, but also have ADA compliance addressed through cleverly placed vertical circulation, elevators, etc. Some of the spaces to the left, a teens area up at the top of the space, and a small coffee clutch area just off of one of the main entrances to the facility. And this gives some sense of inside outside. We have the Carnegie era library further in the view to the left, and to the back part of the addition where we are working with the Historic Commission to reflect some of the architectural vocabulary that had been used there, but then also working with them to understand that as a new building, expressions like large windows that create wonderful reading areas were also something that could be incorporated, and they agreed that that should be the case. The lower image gives you a sense of that kind of main street connector that connects front to back in this building. And this gives you some sense of material use around this building, everything from kind of brick as it comes through to this is an ash product, very much like a hardy board, but giving more of a residential feel and clapboard siding feel, because some portions of this building actually face neighbors that are residential in scale. This aerial overview of it, just to give a sense of the types of other strategies that we employ in terms of helping these buildings become much more efficient than they were previously. This building approaches net zero. It does so through use of photovoltaic arrays, geothermal wells, use of natural light, drawing it down into the building, and all of these things coming together to create something that is 23% more efficient as compared to current Connecticut energy code models, which in and of themselves are about 20 to 25% more efficient than average buildings. So really tremendous performance in that regard, and a real savings for the community as it looks forward to operate the building over the next 50 years.
Thank you, Jim. I think the point of showing you those images again is to kind of help fuel ideas and possibilities of what renovated space can be, and you know, the different scales of renovated space. So again, we're looking at Mary Finn. The benefit here is we've already done, actually back in the 90s, they already did the ADA upgrades. So that's something that you don't have to spend money on at the, you know, for this site and for interior of the building. So those are costs that are already taken care of in the previous renovation addition for the building. So are there any questions before I jump into the options? All right. So looking at option 1A, remember this is the lower intensity option, and what we want to emphasize here is that we are showing site improvements in terms of parking, and two key locations here, one on the south side of the site and one on the north side over here. And actually this is, when I say south, I mean plan south, this isn't due south. So again, this parking helps facilitate the idea that we have different entrances in the building. We don't want any to be back of house. You don't want someone to have to park on one side and either walk through the building to get to another department or walk around the building, which is worse. So we want to make sure that there's opportunities here. Now, any of these options can take it or leave it in turn. We do have some parking here already. There is existing parking and ADA parking here near the main entrance of the building. So this is just showing expansion. And this is taking over the smaller field planned north of the site over here, which could facilitate whatever department ends up on this side. So here we're color coding everything the same way on all the options. So green is going to be your recreation department. The purple is going to be library space. The orange is your senior center space. We are including youth and family in all of these options. And I think although that's not one of the key spaces that we're looking at, we know that they are located in the South Union building along with the rec department. So relocating them might be an added bonus, and there is clearly space in this building to accommodate that, and not just space, but also, again, the separate entrance into that space, which is nice. And then anything highlighted in yellow, those are common shared spaces. You'll probably recognize the gym here and the cafeteria space here on the south side of the building. So again, we have opportunities for entrances into any of these key components. And then we're going to dive into each one of these individually, but just as an overview, what's key here is, again, the square footage is a little bit larger than what you would anticipate in what we had shown previously for, if you were building new construction, because again, you're taking over a classroom at a time versus smaller spaces. So you're plugging in space into the existing layout. So this would be looking at finishes only for all departments. This is something that, we would be looking at in terms of square footage. This is kind of plug and play. The overall square footage of the building is about 72,000 square feet. So the space that you're not seeing here is tied to mechanical spaces and this corridor zone over here, and just shared utility spaces. We are showing the opportunity for facilities to move over here as well, because we feel like they could benefit as well from some of the shared space. And we know that they are currently located in the same building with the senior center, which is also an added benefit. And we learned that during the last study that we did. So we're just looking at this at just a bird's eye view, showing the parking zones. We think it's important to show that there's access from all of these different spots, no matter the level of renovation here. If you're not changing the envelope, you have opportunities to enter the building in multiple locations. Diving into youth and family, we're going to show this once, even though it's included all the options. There's a lot of square footage here. They do need a separate entrance. It is nice for them to have a separate entrance. And what's nice about this little wing is this was a previous addition to the building. So this was done in the 90s. And it is fairly, it's substantially separate from the rest of the building. There are doors separating it. So it has a nice acoustic separation in addition to the entrance to the building, which we thought was a nice opportunity there. Looking at the senior center, again, this is plug and play. What programs can fit where? If you're looking at the building as is, this provides courtyard access. This also, you know, you're entering into the main entrance of the building, which is highly visible. You could create signage there as you're entering into the building, and then look at finishes as you come in, kind of warming up the space, making it more welcome, but not really taking down any walls for this option.
A question about that. Doorways getting bigger, is that included in 1A, or is that a B level renovation?
You know, it depends on how many you do. You know, if you're looking at a couple locations where you're opening up doors, that's not going to really affect your overall cost per square foot. But if you're starting to look at, you know, globally doing that for the whole senior center, then you start going up into that medium level.
Okay.
What's nice about the plan, actually, if I go back to that slide, the existing Mary Finn has lots of toilet room opportunities. So plumbing is not a challenge here in terms of adding new plumbing and trenching slabs. Taking away plumbing is a lot less expensive than trying to add it in. So that's one thing that's really nice about this floor plan as well. We show toilet rooms here. You don't need to use that, you know, they're not necessary to use, but they're there if necessary. Looking at the rec department, Tim, we met with you previously. We know that you like the connection to the fields, you know, as well as to the gym. This is a nice opportunity. This has like the right amount of square footage for you guys in terms of activity space, providing office space, and that visual connection to the fields. What we also like about this is because it was an addition, it again has a nice acoustic separation that's already somewhat built in through this corridor here, and allows for an easy segregation from other departments. The only downside to this is that we know that this one, you're also interested in utilizing the gym space and the cafeteria multi-purpose space. Now, you'd have options there. You can either go through, you know, you can use the outdoor connection, which is close, but you know, when it's snowing and raining, it's not ideal. There is the opportunity to go through other departments here, but that may be a challenge depending on what time of the day it is and whether programs are going on. It's not a long walk. You know, this is an elementary school. Kids do it all the time. It's just, you're dealing with multiple uses now at this point. Library, again, plug and play, looking at options here. What we like about the library is it has that existing library that you're incorporating here with a lot of daylight. You have courtyard access if necessary, lots of conference space. This one actually has 23,000 square feet, which is higher than what we had previously shown in terms of what we anticipated for new construction, which is just under 20,000 square feet for a new library. But you're taking over a little bit more square footage here due to the existing wall construction. And again, if you were to kind of break open a few spaces, you're not looking at changing the cost per square foot that much. But if you start doing it globally, it starts triggering the next level of renovation. All right, jumping over to, oh, sorry, any questions before I go on to the next one?
Can you just reiterate what the 1A pricing was estimated at? Was that
that was the 150 per square foot, yes.
And that would be pretty much across this entire plan of what you're showing here, or is there sections that would be like the facilities section, or sorry, not facilities, rec? Would that kind of be, since it's like probably wouldn't need major work, would that be less because of the gym is already the gym?
Yeah, we wouldn't anticipate a lot of work needed at the rec department. Obviously not the gym, and some of the corridors. Where it would get a little heavier is in the toilet room areas where we need to, you know, upgrade the plumbing over there and make sure everything's at the right height.
Perfect.
All right, so option B, we did look at an option where we did not include the library in this space, but looked at the opportunity for bringing town offices. The benefit of this is that you see a lot more yellow. there's a little bit more flexibility with this type of plan. You can get youth and family, you can get a lot of shared, you know, conference type space. And it also provides buffers between departments as well, which become acoustic buffers, as well as just separation of traffic. So you can, in this actual, the existing library could be a community meeting space with a separate entrance, which could be secured from other parts of the building, which is also very nice. This shows rec in the same location, and senior center in the same location as well, bringing the town offices in blue and providing a separate access to them. This is, you know, this 1B is definitely more of a flexible plan. And what I didn't mention originally is actually any of these plans can be phased. You know, you don't have to do all of the work at the same time. You know, like when Jim was talking about the Tallinn Library, we didn't do every department. We only focused on one department. So that's something that can be looked at as part of this study too, is what if we just do one and we phase these every couple of years in terms of departments moving in. So here's your program square footage. Senior center kind of drops down closer to the new construction value because we are opening spaces. These bold walls are where we're starting to change things around. And so these more intense spaces start triggering that higher cost per square foot. So you can see that, you know, some of these walls are opened up. We're adding doors in. We're kind of reconfiguring this classroom space into a larger space, which is what's needed for the senior daycare space, and even opening up this entrance, this lobby entrance area, which I think is something that could be very beneficial. You know, if you're interested in creating more daylight, bringing it a little bit deeper into the space and making it a little bit more welcoming. So these higher intensity areas are the ones that would be taken to that next level of renovation. And then again, this also has the rec in the same basic configuration. We are showing the assistant director's office, and again, the traffic could potentially go inside or outside for this. And then just looking at the office space, this could be various departments. You know, we did an adjacency study with the town previously, and there's certain departments that we know like to work together. So this is an opportunity if this space is not utilized by a library, it could have another purpose. And the last one, so this is our highest intensity renovation. And you may or may not notice that there are some changes to the exterior of the building. We had previously shown those addition locations, and in this example, we've actually pulled away a portion of the building and created new entrances. This one relocates the rec department. And what we like about this is it takes what is very much the back of a building over here. And I think nook is a nice word for this location back here. And it creates it to be more of a entrance zone. You can bring parking in, you can bring landscaping in, you can actually bring seating and have various areas over there. And we'll show that a little further along. But here's the square footages tied to each of the department over here. And just so you're aware, I can send this to you as a PDF, so you don't have to take notes on each one of these, just for your information. But any of these presentations that we do, we can send along via PDF. So this opens up everything a little bit more in the senior center. We kept this again in the fairly similar location because we think this is the most important entrance for senior center in this building. We think it's the most appropriate based on the existing conditions, and it requires minimal work to signify entrance into this space, and it has the best ADA parking opportunity. So again, these really open your spaces here, and again, we can get large courtyard access here to both senior center and library with this option. but we can fit all the program space and in this square footage here and provide conference and office space that could be shared between various departments and also provide that traffic buffer. A library, so what we're seeing here is again, reconfiguration of entrance here, creating and signifying, giving an identity to this portion of the building. You know, this could actually have a different address versus the other side of the building. You can actually have a you know, you coordinate that with the fire department and everything, and you can actually give this portion of the building a different address. So this, let me get the square footage on here. Whoops, I didn't plug it in there. But this square footage is actually right on for the library. And this zone, like Jim showed in the Duxbury renovation, this zone could also be treated and opened up in very similar fashion. It's your high intensity renovation. So these walls could potentially become columns here, and you kind of open up these zones and create just a nice open flow to the space. This is the key component that I think is something that may or may not be something that you think about at first, but what it does is it really gives you an opportunity to open up this zone, not just for the library, but also for this rec department option. So looking at the building, here's the portion that we're proposing. This is the addition again, that could come back, and you could scale it back and really create something that's more welcoming and more of a front of a building here versus what you saw previously. So these are just shown generically to be entrances, only because that's the architecture and the vernacular that you see, the hip roof and other portions of the building. But those could be open, those could be daylit, they could have lots of storefront and bring natural light into those spaces. We're also showing an addition here, rec department, in order to maintain circulation. And you'll see that in this slide. This rectangle is actually an addition to allow rec to stay interior to their space and have it continuous as you would access the cafeteria and the gymnasium space. And if I didn't highlight it before, we're showing this adjacent to the gym to be dedicated to the rec department and all the options. Okay, so that is a quick overview of what we've been doing. We have put together a more comprehensive report that gives more data, and we are working on plugging all the cost information into all these options. But we want you to understand that these are not final by any means, so we're looking for feedback from you on each of these different components, which is going to be really helpful in terms of making this successful.
Thank you.
I think thanks, Jason.
Being mindful of time, what I think we'll do is, if anyone has any specific questions that I didn't get out kind of during that, let's get those on the table now, or any reactions, and then see where that leaves us in terms of time. So Tim, I see your hand up, so why don't you go first?
Yeah, I would just like a little bit more clarity about your thinking behind eliminating that addition that is in that back corner for option C. Is there no value, or do you see less value in the fact that there's square footage available there? And you could still add that other hallway into one of these plans, or some kind of corridor into these plans to help connect the spaces across? Do you think the entrance is more valuable than the square footage, is kind of the crux of my question?
I guess that really depends on, you know, the goals of this building. If the goal of the building is to pack departments in as much square footage as possible, then yes, you want to keep it. This is more about opening up an area that when you stand here and or if you're driving here around the building, this really feels, I said nook, but it does feel very tight. It's very back of house. It doesn't feel welcoming. So if you're looking at actually creating a nice, library entrance that doesn't feel back of house, and rec entrance that is also a nice opportunity, this also allows that visual connection there. I think it's important to think about this as an option. I understand the question completely, because you said we added this on for a reason. Why would we take it away?
And
Well,
then,
this is a whole new type of project, so it's just looking at opportunities.
okay, and then second to that, did you explore and limiting that nook like altogether, and maybe putting a building kind of in between that, in that nook space? Did you explore anything or think at all about that opportunity and what that could look like?
That is a good question. It is an expensive option, to be honest. Over here, what we're not showing is there's an emergency generator that could be nicely screened. This is the main boiler room, the main electrical room of the space of the whole building. And right now, access to those spaces is key, which is why I think they maintain this. So turning this even into a courtyard is not really ideal in terms of access to those space and life safety concerns if everyone never ever needed to egress from those locations out of the building as well. And typically you want those mechanical spaces on an exterior face of your building that's easily accessible. If we were to close those in, we would have to relocate those spaces, which gets really expensive.
Okay.
Thanks.
Hi, Pam.
Go ahead, Pam.
Okay.
I've got a question on, I'm not great looking at plans, but, is there a space, like a hangout space, like a living room area, like we're building one of those, with our addition that we're putting on currently? Is there, where would you see that in this? Am I missing something?
You could subdivide this space actually, Pam, or even put something like that in this what's called courtyard entrance and seating zone. This is actually, it's kind of deceiving on these plans. It's a full classroom size space. I mean, you're talking about 900 square feet for each of these little blocks. So you could easily create that into, one of your living room space.
Okay, and the other question, is, I guess it's the same concern we've already talked about is there any way to soften up this space? I mean, so it doesn't look like a school, straight hallway with square rooms. I think that is, I understand what you're working with, but I don't know how to do that, but I think that's a big concern of the council, that it not look like an institutional space. They want it to be something comfortable. I'm not sure how many edges you can take off of that, but
Pam,
I mean,
Pam, I would offer that you can think of this diagram as that. This is kind of the test for square footage, and it's a test fit of that space together. But what you're speaking to is more the architecture or the interior design response to that space. And how do you make it feel more residential? How do you make it feel more comfortable? And how do you approach architecture that's less institutional?
Right.
It's very possible within this type of space to achieve that. What you're looking at here is very much just the study test fit of that, if you will.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, no, it space, the amount of space, and it has all the components in it. I'm just,
Yep.
I can't really envision how you turn that into, I guess, something more comfortable.
Yeah,
But
it's very much the next steps of the process to be able to understand those types of needs and then translate it into design work. But there's really some tremendous opportunity with this location in the building, its connection to the courtyard, the amount of natural light available, etc. There are some really good bones to this space to work with.
I agree. I mean, that courtyard space is really neat. Even that the entrance has a really kind of a neat component. You guys, that is really good because it gives us privacy, but it gives us access to the public, which is a kind of a strange concept for people to understand, but that looks like it'll give us what we need for that too, which is great. So, I mean, that with the other shared space for us has all the pieces. I'm just concerned about in the end, more about the feeling, I guess.
Understood.
Go to Ryan.
Yeah, Courtney, I tried to put it in the chat, but would we be able to go to the library specific diagram for 1A? Would that be possible?
Yeah, give me a second here. We'll get back to it.
I'll take this opportunity, I know, because we're running to the end, just on thanking you guys for taking a look at this. And I know Janet, I'll kind of say what I think Janet is thinking. We appreciate the integration of the parking issues that we brought to your attention during our initial conversation.
Yeah.
So basically the classroom walls pretty much still exist, right?
Yes, this is 1A is really that test fit, what works, and this probably is in terms of success and visual connection and providing the appropriate flow that you would do for a new construction library. This is probably the least successful, but it gives us a baseline for this is what this would cost. Does it fit? Does it work in this space in terms of can we fit everything in with these other departments? So to be honest, this is probably more of a stepping stone than the appropriate best and highest solution for the library, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I just always have to eyeball it from sort of an operational perspective. And I can just tell you that 1A actually does sort of, from a logistic perspective on my end, work a little bit better than the 1C, only because with the youth services, I need to sort of ensure that there's staffing, because we wouldn't leave a children's area or a teen area unstaffed, right? Like in a perfect world.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just say the segmented nature of where the children's areas are. I think there was like one potentially across like where the hallway is, like that would just be a lot more challenging, because then it's like, do I have to staff those areas separate? Would we have to expand staffing? So again, I don't want to get into the weeds with that, but I do, from the 1A, I like how it sort of used the existing library space to reconvert it into a children's area. That's something I'm kind of responding more to, but even just putting out the youth services side, I'm just thinking about where staff members would be, where they would sit. Like that definitely seems like it could potentially be a challenge for the library. So that's just feedback I wanted to pass along. But thank you. This is tremendous, and I really appreciate all the work you've put in.
I think that is helpful feedback, because even for that other option, we can look at those adjacencies and improving those to be the proper adjacencies that we have here, but without necessarily all the segregation if it's not required in various locations, like with the adults.
And I have to say that, there's areas allocated for staff use. There's a historical area in 1A. All of that were sort of things that we're looking, they're things you guys already know we need space for, because we kind of talked about that. So I really appreciate this. I have to say 1A is the one I responded to that
Okay.
more than the 1C, to be honest.
Great, thank you.
I believe it would be beneficial for everybody to understand that things within these various 1A, 1B, 1C categories are very fluid at this point. So if you do respond to something very positively in 1A, Ryan, certainly that can translate to the other option as well, and vice versa. So, and I say that for everybody's benefit. If you see something that seems attractive, yet it's in a particular option that you don't necessarily support otherwise, these are very fluid.
Thank you for clarifying that. Obviously, I think there's many phases to go with this proof of concept, advances. I was going to see if Tim Davis had any questions, and I see his hand went up. So I'll give Recreation a chance to speak before going back to Tim F.
So I think I admittedly need to sit with this a little longer. I think my only initial looking at it and thinking back from Courtney when we talked is when it comes to relationship to the other departments, I feel it would just be better fit if recreation and Pam, you can jump in and tell me to be quiet, but have more crossover and more symmetry with the senior center than I would with the library. I think for me, there's concerns with the activities that we do connected, being that being connected with the library and the atmosphere of that. So while I know we're gaining a lot of common use space with the gym and the cafetorium and all that stuff, I just think proximity to the senior center will be better. So yeah, on this 1C, when you do put us in the middle, I feel like that makes a little more sense with it. But that's just my I think initial take. Again, just from thinking about it more and more since we chatted. And like I said, I think I got to sit with it a little more just with space and looking at what we have now and kind of the totality of things and how it would benefit us. But again, my initial would just be location within the building.
Yeah,
People
I
tend to
agree.
be quiet at the library.
It gives us opportunities to do more things together, but I'm not great with the whole spatial thing, but I think it would give us more opportunities to share different things. With us, we can share with both departments too. But it would be cool to have that option to be a little closer.
And Tim, not to speak for you or Jen or the commission, obviously this would result in the loss of a field in any scenario.
Yeah,
But I point that out just, we obviously are going to have another big project in another part of town that likely to replace that and then some if well coordinated in terms of.
Yeah, and I think we kind of mentioned that last time. I mean, with Bert, we just brought back a ball field. I know we have another one off the top of my head that we can renovate to fit the need of what that was. And like you said, we have projects coming down the line. So I think that will be an issue for some folks in town losing that field and some organizations, but I think we can compensate elsewhere. So I'm not too concerned about that piece.
Are we losing the basketball court there?
No, basketball is kind of in that quote unquote nook area that is against the back wall of the gym.
Okay, so parking, it's not affected by parking necessarily, or we could work around.
I mean, right now it's either cars parking there or kids playing basketball there. So it's multi-use right now. So it's something you could fix, I guess, if we're tearing down stuff and building things. I'm sure we can re-coordinate.
Yeah, that would be all up for programming in terms of how that space works. If that was something that was desirable in the future to kind of create those entrances and just open that space up, you could have an even more expansive basketball area if that was like a really primary focus of and nice connection over here. But you can also, there's a lot of opportunity for that space.
Yeah, I think in this, Courtney, there may be a real benefit to swinging that purple area around to Plan North and have it utilize the upper portion for entry into the library to give more separation between library and rec. But it's just another thought. And in doing so, it would allow you that flexibility to really establish maybe a dedicated basketball area, although you may want to think about balls bouncing and library use inside. So we'll have to fully think these things through.
Yeah, I think this does have opportunity, and I was looking at that too. You could easily recreate that over here as well and utilize a dedicated library parking, and then this would be more isolated and segregated for rec.
Tim, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds and then try to wrap this up.
Yeah,
Okay.
Do you say me or Janet?
Well, I was going to go on to another topic and ask about minutes approval, but
if I can ask about this plan just real quick, parking lot E, is there an opportunity with the way that it's set up that it could go closer to the building? I know that was something mentioned before about easier access and less walking distance.
Correct. This is about you want to maintain probably 24 feet here. This is a little bit wider, so you could tighten this up and be a one-way and allow, the key is to have, you know, if you have cars there stacked up for one reason or another, that you can get an emergency vehicle by. So you could definitely tighten that up.
Okay, and then the
It's
second,
quite, go ahead.
okay, sorry, and I didn't mean to cut you off.
It's okay.
The second thing is a courtyard. Did you look at, or have you considered anything about covering that or doing anything else to make it more multi-purpose throughout the year? Or is it just it as is, exactly as it kind of sits now with what you guys have thought so far?
That actually hasn't come up in any discussions yet. Everyone seems to love the courtyard as is, so we didn't actually propose any coverings or greenhouse style, you know, or curtain wall covering it. That's something that could be looked at, you know, in the next level of the study, but there is also a significant cost with that, because anything that spans this type of space, you know, you want to, it's going to be quite expensive actually. And then you have to think about HVAC tied to that space as well, and making sure that it doesn't heat up too much.
Okay, those were it.
Janie, your question on minutes?
Did you talk about this or ask
We
for
did.
feedback?
We approved them beforehand
Approve them.
before we joined. So all good. Thank you. Great job.
Okay.
So here's what I'd like to do and get feedback on. Obviously that was a lot of information for just over an hour. Courtney's going to send around the information. Courtney, send it to me and I'll distribute it to the committee. What I would propose is if individuals have questions that they want the DRA team to think about, just send me an email and I'll compile them all together. I'll just say, it's not deliberation, it's just compiling questions to send along to DRA, just so that they know what you all are thinking, because you all may be thinking different things. Give you like a week or two to do that, and then come back and have, you know, one last discussion about getting those questions answered, so that we can start to deliberate on what we want to do, where we want to go with this as we move forward. Does that make sense to everyone?
So we will have a package that we can access and look at and cogitate over.
Correct.
Right.
Anyone have differing feedback on how to propose that or deal with that? Okay.
Jason, I have a question, and it might be getting ahead of myself, but we have an estimated cost associated with kind of these A, B, and C options for square footage and what it takes and all that. Some are heavier than others. So taking a straight square foot look at it and saying that that applies seems inappropriate. So is there just, you know, I know that I'm kind of thinking ahead, but is there a something we could ask at this stage, or should we not think about it at this stage? Kind of what the A, B, and C options might roughly net out to be.
I think we need to provide feedback to the DRA team first. Right, like, let me just throw out an example. The library team, and again, I'm throwing hypotheticals up. Library team could say, this doesn't work for us. Like, we're going to continue to look on our site and work through the MBLC process, and right, or the Council on Aging crew may say the same thing, right? Like, that changes the whole dynamic of how the space would be used. So the reason I think Courtney and team put together the square footage cost, because that's a real number, right? But how many square feet we decide to phase and do, I think is going to be up to us. And if we put a number out there right now, if you start taking that and multiplying it by the total square footage of the building, this project is done, right? And not going to happen, as opposed to having a thoughtful process. So I would like to see more deliberation, hear more feedback, hear which user groups are like thumbs up, let's go, and hear which groups have some legitimate concerns, or what concerns need to be rehabbed. Like, for example, Pam's comment about the walls, right? If so many walls have to come down, does that put us into another cost per square footage category? Which is fine, but at least we should be able to compare the cost to rehab this space to make it a senior center as compared to just go build a brand new senior center on a site that we don't maybe have, so to say. And that
And
way
with
it'll allow us
with-
to do a comparison.
Yeah, with respect to DRA too, I can tell you from my experience doing the CPA library project, we're really talking about cost estimates at this
Yeah.
point too, because there's additional structural things that they don't, there's information about the building they don't have at this point, right? So this is a cost estimate. That's really what we're talking about. This could, and really typically it ends up costing more. That's,
Well, yeah, I think
That's the
I think
spoiler.
they appropriately, condition that none of this includes site work, right? And we've heard about parking lots and drainage already tonight. So, Tim, I think it is premature. It's just my personal opinion. Just so let's finish our work and then see what the output of our work leads to, and then obviously the finances will start to drive other decisions. All right.
So we will send this through to you, Jason, and I'll put some little bullets on there too, just things to think about as you're looking at the information as well. In terms of
Jason, can we have this to share with our respective boards and committees too?
That's according, yeah. I mean, it's a public document, it's presented. I would honestly send the video of this meeting once it gets posted too, Ryan, like for you and Janet to your board, and obviously, the other members here that have boards and commissions. And let's talk about next steps when we come together again in a few weeks. I'll do a poll, see what works for everyone, try to get this on the calendar 2 to 3 weeks in advance. And that way you can advertise for it too if you want to co-post, if other groups want to join for that discussion. That makes sense?
Yep, thank you.
Okay, Courtney, can I just have you take down the screen for a second?
Oh, of course.
All right. So I will do a poll on meeting date, and I'm crossing my fingers this time. I don't see any public here, so we're not going to do any public comment. So I just want to see if there's any other business to conduct tonight.
Let's all make picking the meeting date easier for you next time.
I'll provide 3 options. All right. Thank you to the DRA team. Thank you for all the hard work. It's very clear you put in a lot of thought. And I look forward to kind of this group's reaction to it as we move forward. All right.
Thanks very much.
With that, we get to motion. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right.
Second.
Roll call vote quickly. Bill,
Yes.
Tim F,
Yep.
Susan,
Yep.
Janet,
Yep.
Nikki,
Yes.
and I am a yes as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Two.